Hello again, Sick Twisted Weather Freaks, and welcome to another special edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host, meteorologist DT from WXRISK here in Central Virginia, the commander of chaos, the colonel of confusion, and the captain of catastrophe. Let's talk about Dorian in This Week in Weather. And I've got a bunch of special maps which took a long time to create some tables here. But I think when you get to at the end of the presentation, you'll like the breakdown here for everybody in Northeast, South Carolina, Central and Eastern North Carolina, and Eastern Virginia, and the Lower Delmarva. So let's get right to it. Obviously, I'm going to say here, Dorian is making a bit of a recovery. It looks that way in the satellite picture. The last reports. We'll talk about some last-minute track adjustments that are necessary, then the forecast breakdown. So let's go right to it. This was a plot here this afternoon, about 4 o'clock or so, and you can see that the pressure is down to 961. And if I'm taking a look at the latest data right now, we can see that a new reconnaissance flight has just come in, and the plane has found this. Pressure is down to 959 millibars. So it's down a little bit, and this is right before 8 o'clock this evening, so this is a pretty recent report. Now, this here was earlier the reconnaissance report. The flight level winds here around 105, 110 knots, and you can see that the purple areas are highlighted here. You can see a peak there and a peak here. Remember, the blue is the flight level wind, so there it goes up to around 105 miles an hour. Down here is the pressure. You can see it was around 960 or so about the same. But like I said, the new reconnaissance flight here, you can see a little better. We're getting some more SFMR, the radar reconnaissance plane. Now you can see winds gusting up to 90 miles an hour, 90 knots at the surface, 105 miles an hour. Notice you're getting some more peaks here up around 105 knots, a little greater than that. So it's definitely, and the pressure you can see, it's getting down towards 950. Notice again here, I don't know if this is going to impact 11 o'clock advisory or not. You can see the pressure is getting down to 954, 955. So, yeah, it may be intensifying here a little bit. This is not a surprise. I talked about this last night. Now some people said, well, do you think it's going to get to 942? No, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to do that. But if the pressure gets down to 950, it's going to be Category 3 again. Now, whether or not they upgrade or not, that I don't know. I don't make that decision. That's a Hurricane Center decision. But it certainly is a possibility. It could possibly intensify another 12 hours or so, I think. So we'll see. All right, here's the latest satellite picture. Definite improvement here. If you looked earlier last night, we had these huge gaps, in the dry slots in here and in here. But now you see much more. The heavy concentration of storms is wrapping around it. Much more concentric, better eye. So it is intensifying a little bit here. There's no doubt about that based upon what I'm seeing in the satellite picture. And again, whether or not 11 o'clock they upgraded back to Category 3, I don't know. They could wait till 5 a.m. I don't know. So this here, of course, is the 5 o'clock advisory, and you can see that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing here very nicely. The black line, of course, takes it right over the Outer Banks, very close to Wilmington and then Morehead City, then over Hatteras and out to sea again. And they've got hurricane warnings up to the North Carolina Virginia border, as you can see, and we'll get to that in just 1 second. Now here is the latest advisories, and you can see that this red area in here, this is all hurricane warning right up to the Virginia North Carolina border down. So all hurricane warnings here. Inland, this stuff here is tropical storm warnings into southeast Virginia, all of Hampton Roads, and tropical storm watches here. I don't know what Philly is doing in this area. Beats the hell out of me. I'm not sure why not. Anywho, this here is the afternoon European ensemble, and I enlarged this so you can see. Now, see these black dots in the red line? These are individual ensemble members showing, bam, where the center is going to go right over. So you can see there's a whole bunch of clusters here over the southeast coast of North Carolina, and a whole bunch right there. You can see it right in that area. And Wilmington, Morehead City, New Bern, the southern portions of the Outer Banks, Ocracoke, all that area, right into the heart of the Pamlico Sounds. Very few north of Nags Head. You can see nothing north of Nags Head here, so it looks like pretty much where it's going to go over. And then this here is the, oops, let me clear that out. This is the British model here. Now this is from the afternoon run. There it is, Friday morning at 2 a.m. 957 millibars. You can see it's right over, I guess it's Wilmington. Dead bang Wilmington, North Carolina. And then here we have Friday morning at 8 a.m. Morehead City, New Bern, bang, right on top of it. And then I think we have the last one is where it goes over Hatteras here. And again, I enlarge this so you can see actually goes a little north of Hatteras, which would be interesting. That would be a pretty big hit here for Nag's Head and Corolla and the Albemarle Sound, and maybe a little higher winds into Sandbridge and Virginia Beach, if that's correct. So that's the UCMED has it going a little north of Nag's Head. Okay, so now we take a look at the the afternoon European run. Now here it is this evening, Thursday evening, Wednesday evening, Thursday evening tomorrow, and you can see that it's at 948 millibars. So that would be a pretty big drop if the model is correct and it does that. I'm not ruling it out. It's down to like 958, so it's possible it could drop another 10 millibars. Not out of the question. So there's that. And then here we can see it Friday morning, 2 a.m., just to the east of Wilmington at 951. Borderline 3, 4, that sort of thing. Okay, headed for Morehead City, and does it make impact in Morehead City? It does. You can see it slamming in there around, that would be 4 a.m. Friday morning, knocking the hell out of the southeast Outer Banks there of North Carolina. And then you can see bang on top of Hatteras, smack dab on top of it, Friday morning, 11 a.m., 951 millibars. So the European, very consistent here. And then finally, the sucker clears the coast. You can see 948. It's going out Friday afternoon, gone, and skies are improving everywhere. So let's look at some of the hurricane models. This here is the 12Z hurricane models from Wednesday midday. And the thing to note here is that we're no longer seeing this tight turn in here. Notice we're not seeing that anymore. Now we're seeing this a little further off the Georgia coast, which means that the hurricane warnings are probably not going to get hurricane winds on the west side of Georgia here. It's too far off the coast. But this is Hatteras here, you can see, and very close to Wilmington, right along it, and then over Hatteras. Notice very few north of Kill Devil Hills, Nag's Head. Very few runs there. All the vast clusters over the Wilmington, Morehead City, Ocracoke, Hatteras. Now this is the GFS ensemble, which is, let me get over here. You can see that. Now this here has it a little further west. You notice it gets very close to Charleston, South Carolina. Notice the 12Z hurricane models do not. Let me show you what Charleston is in case you don't know. You should know, but you might not know. It's right here, okay? Actually there's Charleston, excuse me. And I like that. And then here you can see the GFS ensemble much closer to Charleston. So it's a little further to the west. And here we have a couple of these spaghetti lines, model lines getting close to Nag's Head, Kill Devil Hills, Manteo. And you can see most of them were Hatteras are just to the north. So that's an interesting trend. And then if we look at the, that would match the British model. And then we look here at, this is the 18Z hurricane models have just come out. And you can see they're pretty much, again, Hatteras and just to the north. So that supports the British model solution, I would think. Now, this is a radar simulation from the WRF. Again, I'm not using the WRF to forecast rainfall amounts or winds, that sort of stuff. I'm just using it here for this radar signature so you can see where it is. And again, I'm checking this with the other model data, and it's matching up very closely. So I'm not using the WRF 3 kilometer here as a primary model source. I'm just using it to show you what the radar is expected to look like, because the model produces a nice radar signature. So, a simulation. So this is Friday. This is a Thursday evening, 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. You can see it right smack in Wilmington. Okay, just missing Charleston, and then crashes into Wilmington. A big slam right there. And then here, Friday morning at 4 a.m., it's approaching Morehead City. The eye is on the coast. It's beginning to weaken the eye a little bit. And then here it is. Friday morning at 10 a.m., it's over the Pamlico Sound. And then I guess partially Hatteras. And it's beginning to get ripped apart here, which is not a surprise. If we look at the winds here, now this is the European. Now this is in knots, all right? Notice up here again, not miles per hour, knots. See? Okay. So if we take a look at this, and I think I can bring this up a little bit, enlarge it so you can see with a little more clarity. There we go. So look at the Hampton Roads, for example. 65 knots in Sandbridge, which is hurricane force. Right? 95 knots in Hatteras. That's almost 110 miles an hour. Pretty good wind here. You can see 85, 90 knots in Morehead City, and then also Wilmington, 90 knots here. Charleston, not too shabby, 75 to 80 knots. That's 90 miles an hour. Again, the important point here also is how fast the winds drop off. Okay, so if you're thinking of pulling out, you don't have to go back to Richmond or Raleigh. You just have to go inland a little bit. Look how fast these winds drop off here, really big time. So Richmond winds 30 to 40 knots, max gust for this event. Okay, that's 45 miles an hour. Raleigh, 40 miles an hour. That sort of thing. Fayetteville, 50, 55 knots. That's up to close to 60 miles an hour. Elizabeth City, you're around 60 knots, which is, just under hurricane force. So yeah, it's very tight gradient here with the wind field, and that's not a change. The model's been showing that for quite a while. If we look at the rains, this is the European model. Excuse me, clean this out. Here, the rains, the European model. And you can see, look at Richmond, for example, quarter of an inch of rain, but Sandbridge, 4 inches of rain. And then the east of North Carolina, wow, 6, 7, 8 inches of rain down by Hampton. Down by Wilmington, not Hampton. Wilmington, North Carolina. And then also 10 inches close to Charleston, right along the coast there. And look how fast the rains drop off as soon as you go inland. I mean, that's an impressive gradient. So I'll give you another example of it. Let's see here. There's Emporia on the Virginia, North Carolina border, half-inch of rain. Elizabeth City, 5 inches of rain. That's a pretty good rain gradient. There you go. Not too shabby, Abby. This here is, I think, the GFS. And it's showing the same sort of thing. Very, very sharp gradient. Again, Emporia, a half-inch. And then Elizabeth City, 5 to 6 inches right there. Very tight gradient. So there you go. It's pretty impressive with that rainfall gradient. Okay, so in summary, this is a fairly short report, so let's get right to the summary here. Okay, from North Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, the main rain arrives Thursday around 3 a.m. The max wind gusts 50 to 70 miles an hour, gust 85, when I can see. The worst of the storm is Thursday morning, 11 a.m. to Friday morning, 1 a.m. And the event ends by Friday, 6 a.m. Over and done with, all right? Let's move up the coast. Morehead City, New Bern, Jacksonville. And again, you can use Google Maps if you don't know where this is. You really should know where these areas are. These are not small towns. These are important areas in North Carolina, Virginia. So you can use your Google Maps if you want to. All right. The main rain arrives, or left it off here, around 6 a.m. it should be. And then the wind max gust 50 to 70 miles an hour, gusting to 95. Yeah. Pretty big slam there. The worst of the storm is Thursday, 6 a.m. to Friday, 2 p.m. So there you go. Once it comes to Morehead City, it's going to come in pretty much like a wall. So there, and then the main event ends by Friday. I would think by Friday, 7 a.m. Over and done with, gone. All right, and now let's look inland in North Carolina. Fayetteville, Raleigh, Jacksonville. So obviously Raleigh is on the far western northwest side of it. So a lot of this applies mostly east of Raleigh, such as Fayetteville and Jacksonville. Okay. Main rain arrives Thursday 1 to 2 p.m. from south to north. May not get to Raleigh till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. The main wind gusts 40 to 60 miles an hour, mainly east of 95. A lot less. I think you'll see 60 in Raleigh and along 95, mostly east of there. Okay. And then maybe gusts again, 65, 70. The 70 may be a little too aggressive, but I'll stick with it. The worst of the storm, Thursday, 4 p.m. to Friday, 1 a.m. That's the worst of the storm. Whole thing is over from west to east, Friday morning, 5 to 7 a.m. Sun will be out by midday. Have fun. Okay. Now, power interruptions, count on them in North of Myrtle Beach, Wilmington. It could be several days without power. Morehead City, New Bern, Jacksonville, that sort of thing. And Fayetteville and Raleigh, Jacksonville as well. In terms of the storm tide, I recommend that you go to your Hurricane National Weather Service. They do the storm tides really well. I've never found any reason to go against them except for one event that was Sandy a little bit. So I think they do a pretty good job with the storm tides along the coast there. Now this here is the official from our Morehead City, the max wind gusts. And as you can see on all the Outer Banks, Morehead City, Ocracoke, Hatteras, uh, Manteo, they all have like winds over 110, 115 miles an hour in many places. I think that's the max gust is too high. Maybe I'm wrong, and I may upgrade it tomorrow morning, but I think these wind gusts are too high. So we have a difference of opinion there. All right, let's go on to the next section here. Now let's take a look at Nags Head, Corolla, Currituck, Albemarle Sound, Elizabeth City. The main rain arrives Thursday around 10 p.m. It looks like max wind gusts, sustained winds 50 to 70, gusts to 90, maybe 95, especially over the open waters. Worst of the storm Friday 3 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then the whole thing's over by Friday 6 p.m. All right, interior Southeast Virginia, Northeast to North Carolina. This include Emporia, Franklin, Suffolk, Wilson, Greenville, Roanoke Rapids, that sort of stuff. Murfreesboro, Hosky, all of this area. Max rain arrives Thursday between 10 and 11 p.m. tomorrow evening. Max sustained winds 30 to 50, with gusts to 60, maybe 70, especially over eastern areas. The worst of the storm Friday from 2 a.m. to 12 p.m. and the event ends from 3 to 4 in the afternoon on Friday. All right, for Richmond and the northern neck, the middle peninsula, a lot of everything, this is all I-95. As soon as you go west of I-95, the conditions are going to be much less. I don't know if there's going to be any rain at all from this event in the Piedmont or the Shenandoah Valley. So I just want to keep that in mind. All right, the main rain arrives Friday morning, 2 a.m. in Richmond, maybe 3 or 4 a.m. in the northern neck. Maximum wind gusts 30 to 45, gusts to 50 miles an hour. Worst of the storm from Friday 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and the whole event is over by Friday from west to east, 95 around 2 p.m. and then the northern neck, middle peninsula, Chesapeake Bay by 5 p.m. And Hatteras and the Pamlico Sounds, Manteo, that whole area, again, we'll see winds up to 100 miles an hour. The worst of the storm comes in Friday from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. and it ends 2 to 4 p.m. All right, and then finally, I did want to point out here this third one, the third section, yeah. For the Hampton Roads area, south side, let's talk about that because obviously that's a big area. All right, we're talking Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, Chesapeake, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Sandbridge, that whole area. The main rain arrives Thursday around 11 p.m., from what I can see right now. The max wind gusts 50 to 60 miles an hour sustained, gust to 85, maybe 90, but definitely 85 seems very reasonable. The worst of the storm Friday 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then the whole event again ends west to east 6 7 p.m. Friday afternoon, early evening. Hampton Roads north side, that's Hampton, Newport News, Williamsburg, Gloucester, the lower Virginia Eastern Shore, all that area. Okay, main rain comes in around Friday morning 1 a.m. maybe 2 a.m. Sustained winds 45 65, occasional gusts to 70 or 75, especially over the eastern areas and in towards the bay. Not so much Williamsburg, but east of that. The worst of the storm 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday, from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then it's gone by Friday afternoon 5 to 6 p.m. And then finally the southern Delmarva. By this we're talking about Princess Anne, Snow Hill, Salisbury, Ocean City, Georgetown, Lewes, Delaware. Main rain arrives Friday morning 5 6 a.m. Sustained winds 45 55, maybe gusts to 65 68 miles an hour, something like that. The worst, especially the southern areas. And the worst of the storm Friday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. and the whole thing's done by Friday 7 p.m. There you go. Now let's talk about the tidal flooding. Along the coast of South Carolina, there's not going to be much, and that's because the hurricane is paralleling the coast, okay? So all the big storm tide is going to be on the eastern side of it. But once it gets up to North Carolina and it slams into Morehead City and the eastern North Carolina banks and even into Hampton Roads to some degree, remember that landmass is north of the hurricane. So obviously you're going to have storm surge and storm tide here. Of course, it is a full moon as well. So the Weather Service here, and again, I don't see any reason to go against this at all. You can see over here on the left, we have Elizabeth City. Oops, I'll go back to where we were. We have Elizabeth City here. The normal, the Elizabeth River in Hampton Roads, I should say. I believe this is Norfolk. So the normal flood is 5 feet. It gets to 7.7 feet as max. So it's it's somewhat above normal. Moderate flood, close to major flooding in Elizabeth City and Hampton Roads for a short period of time late on Friday, midday Friday. Now, the middle one is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, and the flood stage there is about 6 feet. They get to 6.9 feet, almost 7 feet. So again, just into the low end of the major flooding. And then the third one on the right side, this is James River at Sewell's Point. Also, uh, you can see that the flooding stage there is about 6 feet. They get to 7.6 feet. So again, moderate, a low end major flooding on all three of those areas. Where because of Dorian, because these areas stick out, you're getting northeast winds driving the water from the ocean into the bay, and you're getting the storm surge on top of that, the spring tide. So yeah, that's what it is. If we didn't have the spring tide, that always adds a foot or two to do it anyway. That's going to make a difference. Most of this major flooding would be in the moderate level. So, but we are going to see that, and it's kind of impressive with the flooding. So that's one thing you have to be careful of. If your area floods in a nor'easter, you're going to flood here. That's the bottom line. If your area floods in nor'easter, you're going to flood here. Okay? And always, if they tell you to get out, get out. Don't dawdle. Don't say, well, I don't think I should move. Really, this is the decisions that they get paid to make, and you should listen to the official warnings all the time in this sort of situation here. Um, Nothing else I can really add. Also, in Hampton Roads, you really should expect power outages lasting a couple of days, maybe longer. Same thing in eastern and northeastern North Carolina. You may survive the winds, but again, you're going to need that power for several days, maybe up to a week. So keep that in mind. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I'll talk to you soon.